Looking at the copy in his hand, Ryan looked helpless. For more than half a month, he didn't know how many distribution companies rejected him. Even if there are countless successful cases brought by past life memories, there is still no way to face a short experimental film shot with a home camera. Ryan murmured to himself with a wry smile, turned around and walked out of the distribution company's door, ready to go back and re-edit it again. Maybe a distribution company could release it. Of course, don't even think about theatrical distribution, he is grateful to be able to distribute the videotape offline directly. Hollywood has more than 1,000 film companies and distribution companies, large and small, and countless films are produced every year, not counting European and other overseas films. Most of them never had a chance to be released, or only a few theaters tried to play them for a few days, and then released them directly to videotapes. It can be said that the vast majority of distribution companies and film companies in Hollywood refer to the distribution of videotapes to recover their investment. Thinking of this, Ryan couldn't help sighing, no wonder Hollywood is a movie paradise. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean in the previous life, the only way to make money for movies was almost all at the box office. There was no offline videotape distribution at all. The first broadcast rights of TV stations were also dispensable, and the income from peripheral products was almost zero. Even after 2020, there is only one item of online copyright that can be sold for a price. In contrast to Hollywood, the box office revenue of a film can account for at most about 30% of the film's total revenue. Many films can recover their costs only by offline videotape distribution, which is unimaginable. Not to mention peripheral products, TV station premiere rights, etc., the means of profit can be described as various. He remembers very clearly that in his previous life, for his dream of being a director, he almost went bankrupt and shot a film. In the end, not only did no distribution company agree to release, but pirated CDs can be seen everywhere in the market, and it is said that they are selling well. As for which publishing company leaked it, there is no way of knowing. What made him dumbfounded was that several regular video websites came to buy the copyright at a very low price, which not only allowed him to recover the filming cost, but also made a small profit. However, the issuing company remained indifferent to him. Fortunately, with the rise of the Internet, many large-scale video websites have begun to set foot in the film industry, shooting a large number of online videos to enrich the film library of the website. In this way, he suddenly became busy, and he had to shoot 5 or 6 movies in a year. Until his death in a car accident in his previous life, there were still 3 filming contracts that were not fulfilled. However, God seemed to have played a joke on him and gave him a new life. Ryan is a graduate of the film department of the University of Southern California. His mother died early, and his father runs a large ranch in Texas. Although he is not considered a rich man, he still has some assets. The annual income of the ranch is very considerable. Otherwise, he wouldn't spend tens of thousands of dollars to shoot a messy experimental short film. But like all American families, the relationship with the stepmother is very cold, and the relationship with the father is getting worse and worse, not very close. For Ryan now, it is good news. It seems that we can only go back and talk about it. Ryan hailed a taxi and went home, lying in bed thinking hard. The current experimental film is really too bad. Even with the experience of his previous life, there was nothing he could do. Perhaps there are many bad movies in Hollywood that sell well, but the premise is that you have a distribution company willing to release them. However, the content of this experimental film is mediocre, and no distribution company is interested in it. To make matters worse, the money on the credit card is only a little over $1,000, which is not considered rich after daily expenses and rent are excluded. This is also the only thing that comforts him. The balance on the credit card is not negative, otherwise he will really fall into an economic crisis. The balance on the credit cards of most young Americans is almost negative, and they have to run around every month to repay the loan. In this respect, Ryan is different from most young Americans. Since he found his first part-time job, he hasn't asked his family for a penny. Apart from the expensive tuition fees, the rest of the living expenses, including the money for shooting documentaries, are saved by himself bit by bit. Then what to do next? It's editing again. Go to the distribution company to try your luck. It's better to find a short-term job to make money first, preferably a job related to the crew. Of course, extras can also be used, nothing more than acting as a background cloth or a dead body. It is not difficult for him. He is in urgent need of funds now, and he is preparing to shoot his first film, so no matter what the job is, as long as it can make money. Whether it is the experience of the previous life or the memory of this life, he has never thought about finding someone to invest in. An unknown college graduate who is preparing to shoot his first official film, unless he is crazy, no one will invest in him. In his previous life, he had been an assistant director for more than 10 years. Even so, when preparing to shoot the first film, no one cared about investment, and could only invest all his wealth on himself. Of course, it is a good choice to go to work on the set if it is really not possible. Working in the crew is a very rare opportunity for college students who have just graduated. You can get familiar with the filming process of the crew, take the opportunity to meet some contacts, and even have a slight possibility of being appreciated by Hollywood bigwigs. You can also save some salary at the same time. That's what Ryan has done before. In addition, any slightly larger crew will not be stingy with salary and food. One of the biggest benefits of working in a Hollywood crew is that you can save money on breakfast, lunch, dinner, and supper. At that moment, Ryan got up from the bed, picked up the phone and called his agent, asking if there was a chance to work on the set. As for the experimental short film, he was really too lazy to continue wasting time editing it. That's right, it's the agent. Almost everyone who works in Hollywood has their own agent. Of course, it can't be some gold medal or big-name agent, just an ordinary small agent, in charge of 20 or 30 extras, or young people like Ryan who intend to develop in Hollywood. Not long after, there was a roaring sound from inside when the phone was connected. Ryan Gosling. How dare you call me? Do you know how much trouble you reading www.yuyugonshu.com caused me last time because of you idiot? On the other side of the phone, Kate's face was gloomy and her voice was full of anger. Just because of this guy, he almost lost the relationship he had so hard to build. Ryan didn't seem to hear it, and said, "Okay Kate, I admit that it was all my fault last time. As long as you are helping me find a job this time, rest assured that I will not let you down." Kate showed a hint of sarcasm, and said unceremoniously, disappointed. "Are you taking an experimental film that looks like garbage again, and looking for recommendations from the crew everywhere?" "Sorry Ryan, I have decided to terminate the contract with you, please don't call me again in the future. Listen to my advice, you are not suitable for Hollywood, you will only waste time if you continue to stay." After speaking, he hung up the phone without hesitation. An unruly guy, clearly inappropriate to continue wasting his resources. The beeping sound from the phone made Ryan very speechless. It seemed that according to what happened in his memory, he was really not suitable to stay in Hollywood. Taking advantage of the opportunity to work in the film crew, I searched for people to recommend the experimental film everywhere, which eventually led to being kicked out of the film crew. Not only did he lose a good job, but he also caused a lot of trouble for the agent. Naturally, he was not likable, and it was only natural for him to be kicked away by the agent. It seems that I have to find another agent again. I hope that what happened last time has not been spread. Putting down the phone, Ryan looked at the ceiling and said to himself, "Finding another agent in Hollywood is like eating and drinking, it's normal." "Hello, did Josie ask for me?" "What? No, that's fine." Ryan put down the phone a little discouraged. It seems that the news about him in the crew was still spread, like a joke, spread among a group of extras and managers. Those who have heard some rumors dare not sign a contract with him at all. Fortunately, there are countless agents in Hollywood, so you don't have to worry about finding an agent, not to mention that some agents may not have heard of this matter. With this in mind, I continued to make calls. Jason, how are you doing? Oh, forget it. Hey, Jack, ask your agent for me. You were also terminated by the agent. Okay then. Almost every day in Hollywood, a large number of extras are terminated by their agents, or extras kick their agents away. What? A brokerage company that just opened. Chen, can you tell me the exact address? Thank you, I'll treat you to a drink later. After asking a lot, Ryan found a brokerage company that had just opened, so he could give it a try. As for not looking for an agent, what a joke! You thought it was so easy to get a part-time job in a film crew. Especially the famous big crew, don't even think about it if it has nothing to do with it. For example, his last job on a film crew was contacted by his agent with the help of his contacts. Ryan didn't think much about it at the moment, he tidied up a bit, and immediately went out to take a taxi, try to see if he could get in, and find another agent. After running for less than half of the city, Ryan finally came to the brokerage company at the address. It was a THRESTRE building that was a little bit old. A signboard had just been erected at the door, with the English words Star Brokerage Company written on it. The Sing Kong Brokerage Company in front of him seemed to have just been established, and even the signboard was newly put up. At least it shouldn't be a foreskin company. It seems pretty reliable. Ryan murmured to himself, and walked in. The inside was somewhat messy, there was no receptionist, and it looked a little deserted. At this time, a young woman came down from upstairs, about 20 years old, a standard American young woman, with a slightly sweet appearance, and generally quite beautiful. You are? The woman looked at him suspiciously. Ryan shook his head, and said, Hello, my name is Ryan Gosling, a graduate of the University of Southern California's film department, and I want to find a job in the film crew, and by the way, I'm familiar with you. Take a look at the filming process of the crew. There is no mention of wanting to be a director, or making an experimental short film. USC film graduate. The woman couldn't help but looked at him in surprise, somewhat curious. The film department of the University of Southern California is also quite famous. For Hollywood, though, a USC film graduate isn't all that unusual. However, graduates of the film department of the University of Southern California who want to enter the film crew and find a job are really rare, which is somewhat surprising. It's just the name Ryan Gosling, she seems to have heard of it somewhere. Ryan Gosling. USC film graduate. The woman looked up and down for a long time, and suddenly realized something, and said, Ryan Gosling, you are the guy who dared to recommend experimental short films everywhere in Tom Hanks' crew. That's right, his last cast was starring Tom Hanks and directed by Robert Zemeckis, a film invested by Paramount. By the way, the title of the film is Forrest Gump. It is conceivable that in such a production crew, even a small matter can be spread uproariously. Besides, it's not a trivial matter. Ryan smiled awkwardly and said, That's just a misunderstanding. Misunderstand? The woman was speechless for a while. This can also be regarded as a misunderstanding. Do you still want to sneak into the crew and recommend that experimental short film? Faced with such a problem, Ryan immediately spoke uprightly, saying, How is it possible? I have learned enough lessons from the last time, and now I just want to find a job to earn living expenses. However, the woman still held suspicious eyes, which made him uncomfortable. Well, let me give you a brief introduction first. My name is Heidi, the receptionist of this company. You can go to the office on the third floor and try. I hope Helen won't accept your big trouble. After speaking, Heidi turned and walked outside. Big trouble. Ryan nodded with a wry smile, and walked to the third floor. Although this Heidi didn't speak very nicely, it also made him unable to refute. Letting an unstable factor into the crew is a big trouble no matter who it is. Not long after, Ryan walked up to the third floor, found the office Heidi had mentioned, and knocked on the door, and a very pleasant voice came from inside. "Come in." Hearing that, Ryan pushed open the door of the office and walked in. What he saw was a very simple office. Except for the most basic office supplies, there was no extra decoration. At this time, there was a woman in front of the desk who was sorting out the documents. She seemed to be a little older than Heidi. She should be in her mid-20s. Her facial features were very delicate, with a slight hint of the softness of an Oriental woman, and her figure was quite tall. Even if he was sitting, he could tell that he was tall, at least 1.65 meters, or even 1.7 meters. Even in Hollywood, where there are so many beauties, she can be regarded as a beauty, or a fashionable beauty. The only fly in the ointment is that the professional suit is too neutral, the face is cold, and there is a hint of shrewdness in the depths of the eyes. It is by no means a vase relying on appearance. A strange look flashed in Ryan's eyes. It seemed that it would be nice to have a beautiful manager. The woman looked up at Ryan, said calmly, "I'm Helen Solomon, the owner of Sing Kong Brokerage Company. You can show me your profile." Ryan took out the personal information, handed it to the other party, and asked insincerely, "The Star Brokerage Company has just been established not long ago." On the stairs just now, he looked around, and it seemed that this company was newer than he thought. Helen flipped through the information briefly, and said, "Well, what you said is not bad. The Star Brokerage Company has just been established. It is indeed a new company." Ryan shrugged and didn't say much. He didn't have any choice now. "By the way, you worked part-time on the set in your first year of college?" Helen asked. "That's right." Ryan nodded, and said, "Sometimes I also make guest appearances as extras or backgrounds." Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. So, you know a lot of extras and crew members? Helen asked again. "It's kind of acquainted with a few, but they are all low-level people," Ryan said truthfully. If he didn't know many people, he might not be able to inquire about Sing Kong Brokerage Company. In fact, if it wasn't for that incident, even without an agent, it wouldn't be difficult for him to work part-time in ordinary film crews. "You are a graduate of the film department of the University of Southern California." Helen put down the documents in her hand, looked at Ryan and asked again. "That's right. I just graduated last year." The only identity Ryan can show is probably a graduate of the University of Southern California's film department. As a well-known private university in the United States, the University of Southern California has always had a good sign. Very good university. By the way, you can show me the experimental short film you shot. If possible, maybe I can find a small distribution company to try it out. Helen finally mentioned the experimental short film. It seems that Heidi had already called her just now. Of course, the release she was talking about couldn't be an online release, but an offline videotape release. "No problem, I can deliver it tomorrow." Ryan agreed without hesitation. Obviously, the Helen in front of me has some contacts of her own, so she can try to recommend them to the publishing company. Next, Helen didn't say anything more, just let his cell phone turn on 24 hours a day, and he would be notified if there was a suitable crew, and he didn't even sign a formal contract. Back home, Ryan retyped the short film overnight. Early the next morning, it was mailed to Sing Kong Brokerage Company by FedEx, and the recipient's name was Helen. In the next half a month or so, Ryan has been familiarizing himself with the surrounding environment, reading various books related to shooting, and the schedule is very full. During this period, Helen called once, saying that a small crew was recruiting extras to serve as the backdrop. Ryan refused without even thinking about it. With such a job, it is obviously impossible to understand the filming process of the crew. Similar to Forrest Gump, the opportunity to work with such a large crew is naturally not something that can be encountered casually, and one can only wait for the opportunity slowly. Fortunately, the money in the credit card can last for a few days, and it is not too late to use it as a background cloth or a corpse. However, in the next few days, there was no news from Helen. In this regard, Ryan was not disappointed. After all, his work on the crew of Forrest Gump had already become a laughingstock for many people, and he was quite famous. As a person with a good reputation and not yet a good reputation, it is obvious that no crew will hire him easily. This is nothing but a normal thing. It seems that we can only go to the bank. After thinking about it, Ryan felt that instead of wasting time as a backdrop, it would be better to go directly to the bank and bring a sum of money first. Of course, the amount of money will not be too much, and it will only cost tens of thousands of dollars. But before that, he first had to write a script, a film that could cost tens of thousands of dollars. The content was simple, the plot was straightforward, the crew was small, and the lower the cost, the better. At the same time, there must be enough publicity and selling points, preferably successful cases that have appeared in previous lives. There are all kinds of success stories in his mind, and he can just pick one out of them. Thinking of this, Ryan immediately found a pen and paper, and began to conceive slowly. It is true that he had watched many movies in his previous life, but now that such a long time has passed, now he needs to recall bit by bit, and it is impossible to remember some details clearly, so he can only fill in slowly according to his memory. In addition, there are inevitably differences in time points, and the plot must conform to the current time period. In addition, although he had filmed many films on the other side of the Pacific Ocean in his previous life, but now he is in Hollywood. Many places are different from the other side of the Pacific Ocean, so there is inevitably a difference in experience. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean is the traditional Oriental culture, while Hollywood is the great Americanism. This must be remembered. In this way, there will not be many films to choose from, or even a handful. Literary and artistic films can basically be excluded. Regardless of past and present lives, he has never made a literary and artistic film, nor does he have that artistic talent. There is no need to consider online movies, because there is no living soil for online movies at all. Commercial films were the genre he was good at in his previous life, but unfortunately he said no money, and without investment of tens of millions of dollars, he didn't even have to think about making commercial films. There are also horror movies. In Hollywood or the entire North American market, there are often small-budget horror movies. It is not difficult to shoot with a small scale, but the difficulty is money. No matter how low budget a horror film is, the required investment would be more than $100,000, far beyond his budget. According to Ryan's plan, it is best to control the cost of the film between $30,000 and $40,000. If it is more, the bank may not lend him a loan. There are American comedies left. Like horror movies, American comedies are also typical of small and big. But let's not talk about cost. For someone who grew up on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, to shoot an American comedy film is a disaster. To shoot a movie at a cost of $30,000 to $40,000, obviously there should not be too many shots, preferably one shot to the end, and there should not be too many background cloths. For an actor, it is best to be a college student who has just graduated, so that you can save a lot of salary. Ryan's thoughts became clearer and clearer, and the ballpoint pen in his hand moved quickly. For a whole afternoon, he was thinking about the direction of the plot, choosing actors, shots, and so on. The plot of this film is very simple, and the actors do not need any acting skills. Even the title of the film is very simple, it is called The Blair Witch. A documentary, or, to be precise, a pseudo-documentary with a tinge of horror. This is one of the most classic marketing success stories in Hollywood in the 1990s, and one of them can even be removed. The plot of the film itself is very simple, and the quality is even comparable to that of the experimental short film he shot. There is nothing to praise. All the highlights are on the promotion and marketing. However, Ryan was a little worried that he could not find a suitable distribution company. Even if a distribution company finally agrees to distribute it, the price to buy out the copyright of the film will not be too much. Yes, it is a buyout, and it is a one-time buyout of all copyrights of the film. Share. He didn't even dare to think about it. It is already a good result to have an issuing company offer a good price to buy it out. Of course, a more generous distribution company may be able to give a big red envelope when the film is sold well. It seems that in addition to the script, we need to make a publicity plan. Ryan couldn't help but let out a long sigh. It's unbelievable that a director is forced to write a publicity plan. However, The Blair Witch, the highlights of this film are all in the promotion and marketing. UU reading www.uuganshu.com has no selling points. If you want to sell it at a suitable price, you must have a wonderful promotional plan. Also, you must be cautious when choosing an issuing company. It is best to choose a company with a better reputation. Ryan thought about the names of Hollywood distribution companies that he could remember, but he couldn't think of which distribution company had a more reliable reputation. He is very clear about the virtues of Hollywood distribution companies. Once the price cannot be negotiated, they will immediately turn their backs, and even stab a knife in the back, making you lose everything. In the previous life, I don't know how many film companies and directors on the other side of the Pacific Ocean were cheated by Hollywood distribution companies. Lau Muzi is a typical example. In the next few days, Ryan first submitted the script to the Editors Association for filing, which was regarded as an insurance policy. In the remaining time, in addition to sorting out a detailed character characteristics and outline, it will be put on the publicity planning plan. The release and publicity of The Blair Witch in the previous life mainly relied on the internet as the carrier, and traditional media such as newspapers and TV stations were only an auxiliary. But the current scale of the internet is far from meeting the requirements, so it can only be reversed, relying on traditional media newspapers and TV stations as the main body of propaganda. To put it bluntly, there is no limit to the hype, making it difficult to tell whether the content of the film is true or false, and it has become a hot topic in North America. As for the truth coming out in the future, how the fooled media and movie fans will react is out of his consideration. The worst is not to sign the director's name, anyway, he doesn't want to bear the infamy. The issuing company doesn't care about these things, as long as it can make money, or simply register an offshore company for issuance. It can make money without damaging the reputation of the issuing company. Script. Helen frowned, flipping through the few thin pages of the script in front of her, and took a few minutes to read it roughly, and then she glanced at the budget again. There will be no film company or investor investing in such a script. Even credit-worthy loans from banks will not pass the review. Although she has never been a producer or director, it can still be seen that the script in front of her is too ordinary, and probably not much better than that experimental short film. 3 film students went to a small town to investigate the local legend about witches, preparing to make it into a documentary, but they disappeared mysteriously shortly afterwards. Such a boring content is destined to be uninterested, and the poor filming cost, the quality of the film can be imagined. Only some novice directors can write such boring scripts. Even if it is actually filmed, at most, like many experimental films, the offline videotapes will be released directly, and there will not even be a chance to distribute offline videotapes. Although there are many financing channels in Hollywood, they are all the way some big companies operate, and you are obviously not one of them. What's more, the script in front of me is worthless in my opinion. Helen stared down at the script on the desk, seemed to think about it, and finally shook her head. Regarding Helen's attitude, Ryan had already prepared for it. The film The Blair Witch was not based on the plot or the film itself. Perhaps this can change your mind. While speaking, Ryan put another promotional camp plan in front of Helen. If it weren't for the cumbersome procedures for applying for a bank loan, he wouldn't have come here with a publicity plan to impress Helen. Video promotion and marketing plan. The words on the file bag made Helen frown, and she didn't want to waste any more time, but she still opened the file bag and started to browse. However, the content inside surprised her, and she was deeply attracted after just reading the beginning. Such a unique publicity model is as dazzling as a shooting star, as if it is a powerful and unconstrained style, which is unimaginable. Even in Hollywood, there has never been such a way of publicity. Or it can be said that this film publicity plan has created a new Hollywood publicity model. Even, in Helen's opinion, it's a pity that such a perfect film promotion plan is used to promote such a film. With an indescribably complicated emotion, Helen finished reading the promotion plan in her hand, and was silent for half a minute before speaking. It's a crazy propaganda method, but it is also feasible, However, this kind of publicity will definitely ignite public opinion, and even once the matter is exposed, there will be countless angry media and movie fans, and they will tear you to pieces. Ryan smiled, and said indifferently, "Infamy is sometimes a way to become famous. What's more, I didn't intend to sign the name, and I'm not a member of the directors' union anyway. Besides, at least it can show that my publicity plan is very successful, isn't it? Such infamy, at least for the time being, is not something he can afford." Helen took a deep breath and said, "It's really good. However, this kind of publicity method is likely to affect the reputation of the distribution company. I am afraid that the future distribution channels of the film will be troublesome." Ryan spread his hands and said, "I don't think anyone will refuse the dollar that can be easily obtained. There is never a bottom line for the downline of Hollywood distribution companies, and various means of publicity and hype are emerging endlessly. Even if he lowered the downline by a large amount, it was still nothing. To the issuing company, he would only appreciate it and would not refuse it. Helen, don't you know a small publishing company? If you are a large distribution company, you may still think about it, but a small distribution company does not need to consider these at all. Besides, it is entirely possible to register a new distribution company and push it to the front to receive cheers from the media and movie fans. Artisan, the distribution company of the Blair Witch in the previous life, chose to release the director and actors together to meet the wrath of the media and countless movie fans. The Artisan company hides behind the scenes and pushes away the negative influence. Naturally, he would not choose this method, so in order to quell the anger of the media and movie fans in the future, he had to release the distribution company or the leading actor of the movie. It's well prepared." Helen nodded. "A newly registered distribution company is obviously a very good shield. But for now these are just empty words. It seems that we need to sign a formal brokerage contract." Helen knew that for the issuing company, the most important thing was profit, not reputation. As long as there were enough interests, these would not be a problem. Most of the extras and crew workers do not actually need to sign a formal agent contract. For them, the agent generally acts as a middleman, not a real agent. Only actors with real potential will be signed by their agents and cultivated with their own contacts and resources. At this time, in Helen's eyes, Ryan already has the value of cultivation. Don't underestimate the value of a director, especially for an agent. The director is only worth more than actors of the same level. "I'm ready for this." Ryan naturally wouldn't refuse. Anyway, he had already received a contract termination application from his previous agent a few days ago, and he signed his name very happily. But the bank. Before he could finish speaking, Helen immediately rejected the bank loan, saying, "The bank loan procedure is cumbersome, and it won't do any good for this film. Anyway, $40,000 is not a lot, I can lend it to you privately for a while." In addition to the publicity plan of the Blair Witch, the most important thing is to keep it secret, but there are many approval procedures for bank loans, which is not conducive to keeping it secret. "However, I have one condition. The main actors in the film need to be selected from the actors under Starry Sky Company. Just like what Ryan used to say in his previous life, there is no free lunch in the world, so Helen would not miss such an opportunity to become famous, and notoriety is sometimes a kind of fame. No problem. Ryan agreed without even thinking about it. Anyway, the protagonists in the film don't need any acting skills, as long as they are young enough. But they must sign a non-disclosure agreement. Before the film is officially released, they must not appear in front of the media and movie fans. It's best to travel to a certain country in Africa for a while and then come back. Helen didn't refuse, even if Ryan didn't say it, she would do it. Next, Helen personally printed out a broker contract and asked Ryan to sign it. The two discussed some important points in the release promotion. After all, Ryan is not familiar with Hollywood's process, and Helen needs to help supplement many details. The distribution company is the key to the success of this film, so we must choose a suitable distribution company. At the same time, you have to be mentally prepared. Even if your publicity plan is perfect, the distribution company may still not pay too high a price. Helen felt it necessary to remind, never overestimate the harshness of the issuing company. Even the distribution company I was talking about. All Hollywood film companies, distribution companies, theaters or producers, directors, investors, etc., are all interests first. Facing a second film shot by a fresh graduate of the University of Southern California's film department, even with an almost perfect promotional plan, he still wouldn't pay too high a price. In Hollywood, the distribution company is the one that decides everything. I have seen the miserliness of the publishing company a long time ago in these days. Ryan made a helpless gesture. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com looked at Helen curiously at the same time, and asked, "Who is the publishing company you are talking about?" Helen picked up the coffee on the table, took a sip, and said casually, 20th Century Fox. My parents have some friendship with George Lucas. You can try to ask him to recommend someone from the distribution department of 20th Century Fox. Ryan looked at the calm Helen in surprise, and subconsciously blurted out, Star Wars. George Lucas. The father of Star Wars, one of the four major Hollywood directors, the founder of Lucasfilm, the founder of Industrial Magic Light, the former owner of Pixar Animation Studio, etc. In the United States, George Lucas can be said to be a household name, and his far-reaching influence is far beyond the imagination of outsiders, and he has a very good cooperative relationship with 20th Century Fox and Paramount. There have long been rumors in Hollywood that George Lucas intends to restart the Star Wars series, which has made many distribution companies eager to see through. It is conceivable that with the recommendation of George Lucas, as long as the content of the film is not too bad, 20th Century Fox will never refuse to release it. I think there should be only one George Lucas in Hollywood. Helen said softly. 20th Century Fox. This is the small distribution company you said last time. Ryan muttered something in a low voice, and then stared at Helen with bright eyes, wishing he could put his whole body together and at the same time show a smile that he thought was bright. Dear Helen, if you have a chance, can you introduce me to the famous senior George Lucas? He's the pride of our entire USC. Helen glanced at him indifferently, but said nothing. From the second day after meeting Helen, Ryan got busy, starting to prepare for the filming of the Blair Witch. Shooting a movie is a very rigorous thing. Even if it is a pseudo-documentary that mainly focuses on publicity and marketing, it still cannot be careless in the slightest. There has never been anything in Hollywood that can be successful casually. Behind every success, there are countless hardships. The first thing to solve is that the crew needs to find a suitable town near Los Angeles as the shooting scene, and at the same time select 3 suitable actors. There are no special requirements for actors, and they can be relaxed, except that the appearance of actors should not be too low. Actors are relatively better, you can just find 2 younger and cheaper ones. Such young male actors are easy to find, and Helen has suitable ones. Actresses are relatively demanding. In addition, Starry Sky Brokerage Company has just started, so it will inevitably take some time to find a suitable actress. In addition, filming also requires a person who coordinates the miscellaneous work of the crew. Even in a small crew, there are many trivial matters that need someone to handle them specially. Fortunately, Helen was responsible for almost all of these tasks, and even Heidi, the first employee of the Star Brokerage Company, acted as an assistant. It can be said that the business of the entire Star Brokerage Company is almost suspended, and all personnel are preparing for the filming of the Blair Witch. According to Helen, the filming of the Blair Witch is the most important business of Starry Sky Brokerage Company at this stage. There cannot be even one outsider, and everything must be kept secret. Unless the film is released, no one can leak any news to the outside world. Everyone, including Heidi, has signed a non-disclosure agreement, and the breach of contract fee is staggeringly high. In just 3 days, Helen chose a small town as the shooting location. The location of the town is very remote, the total population is only in the early 200s, and there are very few outsiders on weekdays. Ryan was busy with actor auditions. To put it bluntly, he was watching how the contracted actors of Starry Sky Brokerage Company performed poor acting skills. In fact, there is nothing to choose, almost all of them are some young actors at the bottom of Hollywood, who usually hang out in various crews, serving as background cloth, passers-by, corpses, etc., so just pick 2 at random. It was the first audition for a leading actress, and perhaps the only audition for a leading actress in the film, and Ryan somewhat looked forward to it. He also doesn't care much about the heroine's acting skills. A pseudo-documentary like this doesn't need any acting skills at all. On the contrary, Helen is very cautious. As long as the film is successful, the 3 leading actors will surely gain a lot of fame. Even being scolded by countless media and movie fans is still a kind of reputation, which is much better than being unknown all the time. In the next step, the development of the Star Agency Company will mainly revolve around them, so she is more concerned about casting than Ryan. Ryan had just entered the Sean Kong Economic Company, and found that there were more than a dozen young female actors in front of him, who came earlier than him, and all of them had exquisite makeup, which set off their slender figures, which was pleasing to the eye. It can be said that in the aspect of single-wheel appearance, all of them are above the passing line. There is nothing strange about this. Hollywood has never lacked beauties, but actresses are the most competitive circle in Hollywood. From where these actresses sit, it can be seen that they are all vigilant, very far apart from each other, and do not talk. No one touched the water and food prepared by Heidi. Most people only see the most glamorous side of Hollywood actresses, never see behind. Often, many actresses face the trouble of age when they just become famous. In Hollywood, actresses are not evergreen, and they eat youth food. Unlike male actors who are more popular as they get older, many big-name male actors are still active on the screen in their 70s and 80s. So those actresses who come to Hollywood with the dream of becoming famous will never let go of any opportunity. Ryan has long been familiar with this. He would only feel strange if someone talked without scruples and drank water or food casually. Regardless of past and present lives, all kinds of rumors or real people and real things have always been common. Especially in terms of diet, most actresses would only eat the food and water they brought, even if it was prepared by the crew, they would not touch it. This is the most basic self-protection. When he came to the 3rd floor to do business, Ryan chatted with Helen for a while, and said with a hint of teasing, "I thought I'd see a red sofa or a red carpet." Memes of red sofas or red carpets have long spread throughout the world. If an actor in Hollywood participates in a crew audition and wants to get a role, if you open the door and walk into the audition venue, you see a red sofa in the middle, or a red blanket on the sofa. Then if an actor wants to win this role, he will consciously close the door, take off his clothes, and lie naked on the sofa. Of course, there is no such rule in Hollywood now, and everything is on the bright side. The red sofa that has been used for decades has faded out of people's sight as early as a few years ago. The main reason is because there is no need. If you want to, you can invite directly. If you think the red sofa looks good, I can ask Heidi to move one over for you. Helen said indifferently. However, the newcomers probably don't know the meaning of the red sofa. This kind of old-fashioned rule, unless it is some senior actors, I am afraid that few people know it now. Let's forget it. Heidi is already busy enough. If I move the sofa, I'm afraid she will kill me. Naturally, Ryan didn't really want a red sofa. The two talked for a while, and officially started the audition. Auditions in Hollywood have long been programmed, and they almost all look the same. The only difference is that the office in front of him is relatively rudimentary and there are no cameras prepared. The actresses who came in introduced themselves first, and just performed a line at random. There was no script, and no insights into the roles. The main reason is naturally for the sake of secrecy. So far, only Ryan and Helen know about the script or plot of the Blair Witch. Even Heidi is kept in the dark. One morning passed, and a total of 8 actresses had auditioned. But none of them are familiar to Ryan. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com are all young actors who can't be named, or they are just some extras. In the previous life, they were some good-looking extras. Ryan, you are the director of the film, and I need your opinion. Seeing that Ryan remained silent, Helen could only speak in person. Ryan gently puffed his fingers and said, "First of all, blacks and Asians or Latinos can be excluded. The 3 do not meet the requirements of the film at all. It's better to be younger, with a petite figure, and with a sweet or weak appearance, so that it is easy to arouse the sympathy of the media and movie fans. A black heroine or an Asian or Latino heroine obviously cannot attract the attention of the public, which is not conducive to the promotion of the film. Only native-born Americans can attract the attention of the media and the public. The key to the success of the Blair Witch is precisely because the distribution company uses the attention and sympathy of the media and the public to attract a large number of people into the cinema. This is the core of the film. A heroine who can arouse the sympathy of the media and the public is what he wants." Helen took a deep look at him and said meaningfully, "Hollywood never lacks actresses with acting skills. Almost all actresses are pretended. It is not difficult for them to be sweeter and weaker." It was Ryan's performance that surprised her a little. Hollywood also has no shortage of talented directors, but few who can truly understand the needs of the North American public. If a director who can understand the needs of the North American public can promote without a bottom line, perhaps no film critics or old academics will like it in the future. But it will definitely win the favor of the film company. After having a simple lunch at noon, the two returned to the office on the 3rd floor to let the actresses behind continue to audition. The first person to come in was a red-haired girl who looked very young, around 17 or 18 years old at most. "Hello." The red girl was somewhat uncomfortable, and there seemed to be a hint of disappointment in her eyes, but she still introduced herself very seriously and said, "Hi, I'm Jessica Chastain." "Jessica Chastain." Ryan raised his head thoughtfully, and seemed to look her up and down for a while. With red hair, pale skin, and the age in front of him, she looked very much like a Hollywood actress in her previous life. Ryan picked up a piece of personal information in front of him, flipped through it, and asked, "The information says that you are currently performing in a theater." "Yes." Jessica Chastain looked a little disturbed. She was performing in a theater, but it was only a small community theater, and the performance was not very formal. "You should be clear that the heroine selected this time is only a film with a small investment, and it will even be difficult to enter theatrical release." Ryan directly pointed out that this is a film with a small investment, and even the protagonist in the film will not receive any special treatment, and may even be unable to be released, and the videotape will be released directly offline. In fact, Jessica Chastain is not stupid, or she is very smart. She has long known that in front of her is a seemingly notorious newcomer director, coupled with a newly established brokerage company. A film, as you can imagine. I have some doubts. However, even such a film is not something she, Jessica Chastain, can refuse to give up. However, for you, it may be a good opportunity, an opportunity to change the trajectory of your life. Ryan didn't say much, handed her the script on the table, and said, "You can read the script first." Regarding Ryan's somewhat abnormal behavior, Helen on the side was very calm. To her, as long as the heroine was a signed artist from Starry Sky Brokerage Company, everything else could be done according to Ryan's wishes. Jessica Chastain took a deep breath, took the script carefully, and began to read it carefully. There are many famous first and second tier movie stars in Hollywood, but they themselves can't understand the script. It can be said that in Hollywood, there are many actors who can't understand the script. But the Jessica Chastain in front of her is not among them. Although she is very young, her academic performance has always been among the best. According to her life trajectory, in a few years, she not only passed the Juilliard School of Art School, but also won the scholarship established by Robin Williams, a proper top student. Even now, she can still understand the script in her hand. It tells the story of 3 film students who went to a small town to investigate local legends about witches and planned to make it into a documentary, but they disappeared mysteriously shortly afterwards. Simplicity cannot be found in a simple plot. The plot is a bit old-fashioned and tacky, there are no thrilling scenes, and there is really nothing exciting in it. Such a script. Jessica Chastain shook her head secretly, she didn't have the desire to continue watching at all, and it even made her a little hard to praise. Very good script. In the end, she managed to say a word of praise. If you are asked to play the role in the script, can you act in your true colors? Ryan smiled dumbly and asked indifferently. Jessica Chastain was overjoyed, and immediately said, "I will definitely try to figure out the role with my heart, and show the best acting skills." Acting. Ryan shook his head at her, and said, "The heroine in the script is a college student majoring in film, so I need you to act in your usual state when you were in school, not an actor who came to perform. As long as you can guarantee this, then the next audition can be completely over." He said very bluntly, as long as Jessica Chastain can show her usual school appearance in the filming, then the heroine is hers. The reason why Ryan made such a rash decision was that Jessica Chastain's student status played a very important role. What is more appropriate than a student to perform a student? Most of the actors who auditioned before are working part-time, and have not been exposed to the campus atmosphere for a long time. I can totally do it." Jessica Chastain was incoherent with excitement. When she thought about becoming the heroine in a movie, she felt that the things in front of her were a little unreal. Even if it is a film with a small investment and a poor script, it is very likely that it will not be released in theaters, but it is still the heroine in a film. Although she often participated in various film and drama-related activities, and even acted as a backdrop, let alone the heroine, she had never acted in a small role with a few seconds of screen time. Actors also need to accumulate qualifications. The heroine of a movie cannot be compared with the role of many secondary roles. Otherwise, Hollywood's low-cost independent films will not make countless actors eager. Of course, the film in front of me can also be classified as an independent film. By the way, you should still be in school now, do you need to ask the school for leave? Ryan suddenly thought that Jessica Chastain in front of him seemed to be still in school. "I can ask the school for leave myself, there shouldn't be any problem." Compared with the heroine in a film, it is obviously not difficult for Jessica Chastain to ask for leave from school. If it is placed on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, if a high school student or junior high school student asks for leave to shoot a movie, countless people will come out to stop it. But in the United States, it is not a problem at all. Many private schools wished for a big star to appear in their own school, so as to take the opportunity to increase the school's exposure. Well, you go back and familiarize yourself with the script first. From next Monday, the crew will officially start filming. Ryan estimated the time, and estimated that there would be no problem starting next Monday. Even if Helen didn't feel that it was too hasty, he could start the machine now and guarantee that the shooting would end as quickly as possible. As for the salary, Helen will talk to you later. By the way, the content of the script needs to be kept secret and cannot be disclosed to anyone. Jessica Chastain suddenly felt that the script in her hand became heavy, and she was afraid that if it was accidentally leaked out, she would lose the opportunity to perform as the heroine. As for the salary, it is no longer in her consideration. Every day in Hollywood, there are a lot of actresses. In order to be able to become the heroine, pay their salary, or post themselves, only those famous big-name stars really care about the salary. Thank you, I will definitely keep it a secret. Ryan smiled lightly and said, "You won't regret your choice today." Jessica Chastain nodded vigorously, carefully put the script into the lady's bag, and then said goodbye. Regarding Ryan's decision, Helen didn't say a word until Jessica Chastain left. She said, "You want to highlight the existence of the heroine in the film." Ryan said undeniably, "That's right. It doesn't matter whether the film itself mainly sets off the heroine or the other two male protagonists. However, I really don't see any potential in the actor you selected. It's better to bring out some heroines. Besides, when the film is released, both the media and the public who feel fooled need someone to vent to. The distribution company of the film obviously won't be blamed. As an investor, director, and editor, Ryan will naturally not be blamed. Then only a few leading actors in the film can be allowed to vent the anger of the media and movie fans. This is the case with craftsmanship in the previous life, pushing out the director and main actors in the film to let the media and movie fans vent their anger. He just crossed out the director column now. Although negative reputation is also a kind of fame, once the situation cannot be dealt with, then you will ruin their acting career and have to leave Hollywood sadly. Helen looked calm, with beautiful blue eyes, looking at Ryan quietly. There is no other way. Ryan shrugged his shoulders with a helpless expression. And what about Jessica Chastain? How are you going to whitewash her with the media and the public? Helen showed a sneer, and said, "You are not afraid to wait for the movie to be released. Faced with the abuse of countless people, she will be the first to kill you." During the audition just now, Ryan didn't mention this matter at all. For a girl who was only 17 years old to accept vicious abuse from the entire North American media and countless movie fans, she had to collapse. He's just a total jerk. The momentary abuse will always pass. At worst, go on a trip for a while, and when she comes back from the trip, the media will have forgotten all about her. Even if it is a superstar, it is impossible to be sought after by the media all the time. With countless news happenings in Hollywood every day, she will be forgotten in no time. What's more, a young girl who doesn't hide her 18 years old will always have some preferential treatment. For example, study hard and get admitted to a famous university with excellent grades. It is best to get a scholarship. I personally think that USC is a very good choice. Ryan didn't care about Helen's ridicule at all, instead he said to himself. Very nice persona. Helen's tone was slightly cold, and said, "But do you think the entrance examination of the University of Southern California is easy?" The entrance examination of the University of Southern California has always been strict, especially the interview, which is simply outrageous. Coming from Jessica Chastain's family, getting into the University of Southern California is not an easy task. Ryan said without changing his face, the University of Southern California may indeed have a certain degree of difficulty for Jessica Chastain. But if she can have a recommendation letter from a famous USC alumni, I don't think the school will reject her. In American society, celebrity recommendation letters often play a pivotal role. Notable USC alumni. You mean yourself? You still don't know the meaning of this sentence. Helen's tone contained a hint of sarcasm, as if mocking his ignorance. Wanting a famous alumnus of the University of Southern California, Kanshu www.uuganshu.com to write a recommendation letter to a girl who has been burdened with countless negative news. The difficulty of it is far more difficult than imagined. Ryan returned a smile that he thought was very handsome, and said, "Ahem, I am naturally not a famous alumni. However, Senior George himself is not only a famous alumnus of the University of Southern California, but also often returns to his alma mater to give free lectures. George Lucas is a well-known alumnus who graduated from the University of Southern California, and George Lucas has always been generous in returning donations to his alma mater. If there is a recommendation letter written by George Lucas himself, no matter how much abuse there is, the interview can be easily passed. USC will never reject a student recommended by George Lucas. You don't have to worry about these." Helen obviously just realized that George Lucas not only has extensive connections in Hollywood, but is also a famous USC alumnus who is keen to give back to his alma mater. Ryan spread his hands and didn't say much. He didn't believe that when The Blair Witch was released, even if it was only half of the box office in the previous life, it would reach tens of millions of dollars. Helen would probably think of a way to whitewash the three leading actors at the first time. The North American box office of The Blair Witch reached $140.5 million, and the global box office reached $249 million. Even if it is a few years in advance, the box office may have some deviations, and it is estimated that it will not be too low. He didn't believe it. Helen wouldn't be in a hurry then. Anyway, she is the boss of Sing Kong Brokerage Company. Ryan just wanted to find a well-known, popular, and cheap actress to be the heroine of his next film. Otherwise, he would be too lazy to say anything. Hollywood film production is like an assembly line, rigorous and lacking in artistic atmosphere. Every film with a high investment is a difficult task that requires multiple scrutiny and cannot tolerate the slightest mistake. As for the artistic atmosphere, what is that? Most Hollywood film companies and distribution companies don't know what an artistic atmosphere is. So it was with Ryan, and so it was with Helen. Generally speaking, there are two main positions in Hollywood film shooting: producer and director. The investment in The Blair Witch was pitifully low, so naturally there would not be a number of producers, directors, and assistant directors, so the producer and director were all served by Ryan himself, and by the way, a screenwriter was also added. Helen acted as the casting director and field manager, and Heidi acted as her assistant, plus part-time chores for logistics. It can be said that except for some necessary positions, the entire crew is almost all employees of Star Brokerage Company. There was no other way to do this. First, it could be kept secret. Second, the entire crew only had a budget of $40,000, so they had to save money. Excluding the daily expenses, the combined remuneration of the three protagonists was less than $3,000. The most expensive member of the entire crew was a senior makeup artist with a weekly salary of $400, and it was still for Helen's sake. By the way, this makeup artist is also the only official employee of the crew. None of the remaining photographers, lighting engineers, scene managers, prop artists, etc. Ryan had already calculated that Helen and Heidi could be the stage managers and props masters, and he himself would be the cameraman and lighting engineer. Anyway, he could do whatever he could to save money. This is how The Blair Witch was filmed in the previous life. At the same time, Helen contacted a small rental and sales equipment company, and rented audio tapes, Hi8 cameras, 16mm cameras, etc., a few simple shooting equipment at a very low price. In just a few days, the preparations for the crew were completed, and the launch of The Blair Witch was ushered in. On March 1, 1994, Ryan came to the United States to start filming for the first time in his life. According to the customs of some Hong Kong directors in the previous life, the first thing to do when the film is turned on is to start the movie and worship God. Fortunately, there is no opening ceremony in Hollywood. There are less than 10 crew members in total, and the filming started quietly in a small town near New York. There was no press conference, no fans watching, no cheering, everything seemed very quiet. To be honest, such a crew is much simpler than some independent films, and it looks ridiculous. Well, I admit it's worse than I thought. Wrong, it should be said that it is terrible. I have never seen such a bad crew. It's literally worse than a script. Okay, you two, be quiet, you are the leading role anyway. Hellstar, I doubt the movie even got a chance to be screened. It's not bad to be able to release videotapes. I will definitely buy a few boxes and give them away when the time comes. The three leading actors in the film whispered. With a tiny investment, a crude crew, a novice director, and three young actors with no acting skills, no matter how you look at it, it looks like a garbage movie that is about to be born. In the scene before her, Jessica Chastain was a little discouraged, it was more like a farce than a crew. But the three of them are not really good actors, or even small actors. They usually act as background cloths and dead bodies, and there is Helen, the manager, present, so no one dares to say anything. Otherwise, Ryan will be replaced immediately. However, less than a minute after turning it on, Ryan encountered some small troubles. He directly put down the camera in his hand and walked in front of the three leading actors. I'll say it again, you are students of the university's film department, not actors, let alone on set. Don't fiddle with your poor acting skills in front of me, remember what I want is naturalness, a university film student who plays in his true colors. The three leading actors looked at each other in blank dismay. They don't need acting skills? Hell, the video shot in this way is sure to be watchable. The most difficult and also the easiest part of the Blair Witch is that the three leading actors in the film do not need even a little bit of acting skills. Only in this way can they appear more real. Let the media and movie fans feel that this is a real event, not a filmed film. So Ryan doesn't need them to put on poor acting in front of the camera. The success of the Blair Witch in the previous life, in addition to the viral publicity, is also due to the real performances of the three leading actors in the film. Ahem, or in other words, he has no acting skills at all. The filming started again, barely better than before, but Ryan stopped again. Helen, the props I need must be real and not fake. If you are not prepared, you can ask Heidi to buy them immediately. It all had to look natural. Ryan glanced at the props prepared by the crew, and frowned slightly. Since I want the media and movie fans to believe that this is a real event, then there should be no falsehoods on the props, and the observation power of the media and movie fans must not be underestimated. It was my fault. Helen was slightly taken aback, then took the initiative to admit her mistake, and said, I'll let Heidi prepare the props again. After Helen had spoken, Heidi could only re-prepare the props with a face of reluctance. The next filming went smoothly, and the three leading actors all entered their roles, or it was a performance without any acting skills. Anyway, Ryan doesn't need them to perform well, as long as there are no logical flaws in their expressions, so the filming proceeded very quickly. The filming budget of the entire crew is only $40,000. Excluding daily expenses, rental equipment, props, actors' remuneration, etc., there is almost nothing left, and there is not enough money to polish each shot repeatedly. What's more, the camera in his hand is simply indescribable, and the effect of the video shot with the handheld camera can be imagined. During the break, Helen walked over with a bottle of drink and handed it to Ryan. You can take a proper break. If the budget is not enough, I can lend you some, or use it as an investment. Ryan's shooting plan is full of arrangements, and there is hardly any rest time. Maybe the crew members wouldn't complain too much, but Helen couldn't sit idly by. I just hope to catch up with the schedule and strive for the film to be released before May. Ryan was a little unconcerned. In his previous life, when he was filming in UU reading www.uugonshu.com, he often rotated continuously, shooting non-stop for 24 hours. Similar to the shooting just now, it was already very easy. As soon as the summer season comes in April, let alone how much resources the distribution company will give to this film, just competing with those big productions at the same time is not a good choice. On the contrary, March and April are the off-season for the entire North American film market. Few major productions are released, which is very beneficial to the release of films. He sees this very clearly. Instead of competing with all the big productions in May, it is better to dominate March and April. Helen nodded, agreeing with his point of view very much. Well, I will communicate with other personnel, but you also need to relax properly. Ryan nodded, agreeing. In fact, this is also a mistake made by his previous filming experience. The Hollywood production crew is not the online movie production crew in the previous life. There are obvious differences between the two. It is okay to have a faster pace, but it is necessary to leave enough rest time. That is to say, the production team couldn't be smaller, and he is a producer, part-time director, screenwriter, and investor, and the only manager of the production team is Helen, otherwise, there will be some troubles. Subsequently, Ryan changed some shooting plans to try to make it easier. At the end of the day, the crew's shooting plan was less than one-third of the original plan, which made Ryan somewhat helpless. Calculated in this way, it will take about a week for the entire film to be shot. 3 days later than his original plan, more than half slower. Don't think that 3 days is too fast. According to the shooting speed of previous Hong Kong directors, such a film would be considered slow in 3 days. Some directors can finish shooting in a day or two at most. The Blair Witch is just a poor pseudo-documentary film with a small investment, and it is impossible to shoot for several months or more than half a year like a large Hollywood crew. What's more, in Ryan's previous life, he shot online movies, which were known for their speed. As long as the shots were passable, they would not stop, and there was almost no rest time. It took 2 days for the crew to finish filming the scenes in the jungle, then moved to the town and the beach, and continued to shoot the rest of the shots non-stop. The temperature in Los Angeles in early March is still cold, and it can make people shiver in the morning. Ryan had to wait until the sun was out and the weather was warmer before shooting. Otherwise, in case the crew catches a cold and has a fever, it will only delay the shooting process, which is not worth the candle. It's okay to talk during the day, but there is nothing to do at night. Several actors can only endure the cold. Whenever a scene is shot, Heidi will always come forward immediately, holding a cup of steaming coffee or hot chocolate in her hand. Compared with actresses, male actors can wear more clothes. As the only heroine in the film, Jessica Chastain is not so lucky. She needs to show her beautiful figure and often turns blue from the cold, but had to continue filming. RV. Naturally, it is impossible for the crew to prepare. The best way to keep warm is a big bonfire other than a cup of hot coffee or hot chocolate. Although it can't be said that it is full of bitterness, it is inevitable that there is some resentment. Perhaps the entire crew, only the food is satisfactory. Hollywood crews, even poor ones, are not too strict on diet. Ruyen was speechless for a while. In the previous life, the crew could eat 10 yu in a lunch box, which is considered a conscientious crew. In contrast, the daily diet of Hollywood crews is simply a luxury. It made him feel bad, these were all his money. If it hadn't been for Helen's persistent insistence, he would have had 3 meals of pizza, hamburgers, and Coke every day. It is cheap and convenient. Because of the temperature, every time Ryan shoots a shot, the actors have to stop and rest for a while, and then drink coffee together and sit in front of the fire. Actors can rest, but Ryan can't. He has a lot to think about. For example, a film needs at least 4 soundtracks. Whether it is original or purchased copyright, he needs to personally select one by one. Fortunately, there is enough time. If it doesn't work, the soundtrack can be handed over to the distribution company. As for the soundtrack of the film in his previous life, he had long forgotten it completely. Even the content of the film was pieced together bit by bit, so how could he remember the soundtrack? As time passed, most of the shots have been filmed, and only the 3 leading actors in the film are left. A few shots of going to the town to interview residents have not been shot yet. Ryan specially asked Helen to find a few extras to act as residents of the town. A few real town residents were mixed in, and they were not told about the filming in advance, as if everything had happened in real life. These were all done without the knowledge of the rest of the crew, including several actors. During the period, there were no accidents at all, and the shooting process went very smoothly. For a while, the crew was able to wrap up. The calculated shooting time was much earlier than Ryan's expected 7 days, and it took a little more than 5 days in total. The ability to shoot at such a fast speed is inseparable from his previous life experience. Secondly, he was very well prepared. There were only a few small accidents during the period, which did not affect the progress of the filming. In addition, the content of the film is very simple, the number of times he calls to stop is very small, basically 1 or 2 times can be passed. It does not matter if the performance is not in place. Anyway, the film itself does not need any acting skills, as long as it does not show its feet. When the Blair Witch was released in the previous life, there were some flaws. When the 3 protagonists get lost in the woods, the road can be vaguely seen through the gaps in the trees. Now Ryan will naturally not make such a low-level mistake. Of course, this mistake does not lie with the director, but with the editor. Often an excellent editor can add a lot to the film, while a very ordinary editor may ruin an otherwise excellent film. Therefore, the editing rights of Hollywood movies are almost all in the hands of the producers, and only the top directors have the final editing rights. For most directors, editing rights are merely a luxury. This approach is good or bad, no one can say for sure. Now Ryan is a little worried about how to find a good editor. An excellent editor is also a scarce resource. They often sign long-term contracts with major film companies, rarely accept private work, and are expensive. Therefore, it is not so easy to find a cheap and skilled editor. However, after the shooting of the film was over, there was less than $10,000 left. Next, the film still needs post-production soundtrack, recording, and so on. It is estimated that the money for an editor will not be too much. A film shot at a cost of $40,000 cannot spend tens of thousands of dollars to hire an editor. However, these are all headaches for Ryan and have nothing to do with actors. After the filming ended, Jessica Chastain, who was the lead actress, naturally relaxed. She was very excited to be the heroine for the first time, but when everyone was talking about the dinner party, she quietly came to Ryan's side. Well, the money for the dinner was naturally not paid by Ryan, a poor man, but Helen's private treat. After all, most of the crew members are from Starry Sky Brokerage Company. Naturally, as the boss, Helen can't be stingy, and needs to simply celebrate. Ryan, if you're short on actresses for your next film, send me an audition invite. I mean if. Jessica Chastain was somewhat embarrassed. Through these few days of filming, she realized very clearly that the relationship between Ryan and Helen seemed to be very unusual, and many things were decided by Ryan. Ryan looked at her embarrassed look and found it a little funny. If she knew that waiting for the film to be released, she would face the whole of North America, even Britain, Germany, France, and other English-speaking countries, and countless media and public abuse. I don't know how she would feel. Would you hate him so much that he would cramp and peel off his skin? Why do you want to give up your studies and become a full-time actor? Give up your studies. Jessica Chastain was a little conflicted. She really liked being an actress, but she didn't want to give up her studies so easily. I haven't thought about it yet, but as long as you invite me to audition, I will definitely come. Naturally, Ryan would not reject an actress with a certain reputation and a very cheap salary. Alright, Jessica, if I shoot the next film, reading www.yuyugonshu.com will definitely notify Helen to let you audition. However, I advise you not to give up your studies easily. Getting admitted to a good university will only benefit your future development. The most important thing in Hollywood is not acting skills, but character design. A good character design often has unexpected uses. I knew you would say yes. Jessica Chastain was overjoyed, kissed Ryan the cheek, and before he could react, got up and ran away. At this time, Helen came over with a cup of coffee, with a calm expression, pointed to the lip marks on Ryan's face, and said, "If I were you, I would stay away from her for a while, or wait until the movie is released, and let her know that it might ruin the movie. Acting career, maybe it will really kill you." Ryan spread his hands helplessly, and said, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in little girls. Besides, I'm worrying about the soundtrack and editing." Having said that, he stared straight at Helen's beautiful face. "Dear Helen, I know you will have a solution. Lucasfilm not only has the famous Industrial Light and Magic, but also a Skywalker sound effects company, which can score and edit films." Helen had long been accustomed to Ryan's appearance, and said lightly, "Skywalker Audio Company's price is not cheap, so the soundtrack can be left to the publishing company. As for film editing, I can introduce you to a good editor, but the specific price needs to be negotiated by yourself. The United States also pays attention to authentic connections, but business is business after all. The Skywalker Sound Company won't be much cheaper for it." What's more, Helen didn't want to use the George Lucas relationship too often. As the filming of The Crew ended, Ryan became a little worried. It was not an easy task to cut more than 90 minutes of film out of more than 200 minutes of material. Of course, there is also a good side. The material produced by many Hollywood films takes at least about 1,000 minutes, and even the material of some art films may double again. In contrast, Ryan only shot more than 200 minutes of material, which is really nothing. On the downside, though, the entire film was shot with a handheld camera, and even though it was kept as steady as possible, there was still some jiggling, plus some scenes that needed jiggling in the first place. You don't need to watch him to know it. After watching the whole movie, it is inevitable that people will feel dizzy. Next, it is a technical job to cut out more than 90 minutes of video from the 200 plus minutes of material, and to ensure that the audience will not feel too dizzy after watching it. Fortunately, Ryan didn't worry for long, and Helen introduced an editor. Chris Paul, once served as the assistant editor of Star Wars. In addition, he also served as the main editor of several niche films. Niche videos. Could it be that apart from Star Wars, the rest of the films are directly released videotapes? Ryan immediately understood the meaning of the niche films she said. There are many small distribution companies in Hollywood, and they have no real distribution channels at all. The films purchased by these distribution companies from all over the world are generally reedited, and the offline videotapes are directly released, and they will not be shown in cinemas. It made some unknown editors specialize in editing such films. Don't look at the small income from editing each film, but it can't stand the large number of films, and the sum of all the pieces is definitely not a small amount. Exactly. Helen wrote down the address and phone number calmly, and said, "However, his editing skills are not bad, and his weekly salary is only $800. If you think you can, you might as well go to this address to find him." The weekly salary of $800 can't be said to be cheap, nor can it be said to be too expensive, at most so-so. All right. Ryan took over the address and phone number and asked, "I need to know the name of the movie he edited." A good editor is not necessarily suitable for all types of films. Some are more commercial, some are more artistic, and some are more fearful, so you need to watch the films he has edited first. No problem. Helen proficiently reported the names of several films, none of which he was familiar with. After Ryan took notes, he said goodbye to Helen and left. He found a blockbuster chain rental shop and planned to rent the few movies Helen mentioned. As for the release of the film, neither of them talked about it. Naturally, Helen will take care of this matter. In a blockbuster chain rental store, Ryan spent a lot of effort and finally found 2 of the videotapes. There are still 2 films that are not available at all, and there are a few films left. The clerk finally told him that they seemed to be rented out, and they were inked for more than an hour. To be honest, he was very speechless about the service attitude of the blockbuster chain rental store. The clerk was almost dispensable, and he needed to find the movies by himself. After urging him several times, he told him that there was no one with a bad attitude. As for computer inquiries and humanized services, go to hell. It's no wonder the blockbuster chain of rental stores ended up going bankrupt. Ryan curled his lips and drove home. Even without the emergence of online rental and the birth of video websites, I am afraid that such a rental chain store will eventually be eliminated by the market. The service is not in place, and it is cumbersome to find movies. It is no wonder that they are not eliminated. When he got home, Ryan watched the 2 films again, carefully studied every shot, and didn't even bother with dinner. 2 films, one British and one French literary film, although both were red-eyed, have a decent sense of rhythm. Careful observation reveals that the editor corrected several mistakes. The cut is not bad, we can see each other. Ryan is basically satisfied, especially the price. For many low-budget films, there is no dedicated editor. Most of the time, the director himself acts as the editor, so there will inevitably be some small mistakes. As a result, Hollywood distribution companies can only hire people for secondary editing. The success of The Blair Witch in the previous life was due to the fact that publicity can take up the main part, and the editor absolutely contributed to the rest. Otherwise, a film that makes people dizzy, even if the promotion plan is perfect, it is still difficult to get a good box office. Early the next morning, Ryan took a taxi and came to Nandu in downtown Los Angeles, gradually driving into a slum. There is no comparison between the slums in the United States and the countryside on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. The law and order here is appallingly bad, and crimes such as robbery, theft, and marijuana trafficking can be seen almost everywhere. Unless it is a last resort, the locals rarely come here. Fortunately, generally speaking, it is safe during the day, provided that you do not go to remote alleys, otherwise you will ask for trouble. Not long after, the car stopped under an old apartment building. Ryan checked the address carefully before getting out of the car cautiously. The old apartment building in front of me has no security measures and no cameras, as if you can come in and out at will. Ryan didn't stay long, and walked to the farthest apartment on the 3rd floor according to the address Helen gave, and gently drummed on the door. "Excuse me, is Mr. Chris Paul at home? I'm Ryan Gosling, introduced by Miss Helen." The apartment in front of me didn't seem to have very good sound insulation, and the sound of footsteps coming from inside could be heard. About 10 seconds later, the door was pulled open from the inside, and a middle-aged black man appeared who was a bit slovenly. "You are the one introduced by Helen on the phone?" the middle-aged black man asked with a hoarse voice. "Yes, Miss Helen is my manager." Ryan looked at the middle-aged black man in front of him, and said with a slightly hesitant expression, "You are Mr. Chris Paul." Unexpectedly, the editor introduced by Helen turned out to be a black man. Now is not the United States after 9/11. There is no such thing as Black Lives Matter. The status of black people in Hollywood is similar to that of Asians and Latinos. At the same time, Ryan also has some original feelings. No wonder a skilled editor who once served as an assistant editor of Star Wars lives in a poor area and specializes in secondary editing of some niche films. In Hollywood, white people are allowed to make mistakes. At most, after a while, new opportunities will still appear. But if you are a black man, it will be completely different. Once you make a mistake, it will mean being marginalized by Hollywood. "If I'm not wrong, I'm Chris Paul." Chris Paul invited Ryan in and said, "Since you were introduced by Helen, you don't need to be so polite, you can sit wherever you want. And just call me Paul." Ryan looked at the small apartment in front of him. It was barely tidy, but almost half of the space was occupied by various large and small instruments. It was more of a small editing room than an apartment, and finding a suitable place to sit seemed to be a challenge. In the end, Ryan could only carefully sit down on a dilapidated chair, for fear that the chair under him would fall apart if he was not careful. Helen has already told me about your matter. It's $800 a week, no matter how many days the cut is finished. Chris Paul was very straightforward and said, "Of course, if you rent a formal editing room, I can make it cheaper." "Mr. Paul, I think you have misunderstood. This is just a video shot by a handheld camera. A regular editing room is too luxurious for it. It would be better to charge $800 a week. Renting a formal editing room is expensive, and Ryan naturally wouldn't waste that money. The equipment in front of him can completely edit a film shot with a handheld camera." Handheld camera? Chris Paul looked at Ryan in surprise. He really wanted to ask, does anyone still shoot videos with a handheld camera? "Well, I need to watch all the shooting shots of the film first, and then I can discuss with you how to edit it. I would also like to ask, whether this film will be released directly on videotape, or will be screened on demand like a regular film." As for the large-scale release, he didn't even think about it. It is almost a luxury for a film shot with a handheld camera to be released on a large scale in theaters. Helen has already contacted about the distribution, and she should choose to order screenings. Ryan replied half-truthfully. It turned out to be the distribution company that Helen contacted, so there is no problem. Chris Paul showed such an expression. With the connections of Helen's parents, it is not difficult to find a small distribution company. The next thing was very simple. The two of them drove to Sing Kong Brokerage Company together to sign a film editing contract. After watching the material of the film, Chris Paul kept his head down and said nothing. It is a low-budget film, very shoddy. As usual, he edited it directly into a videotape, and didn't even think about entering the theater. The theater-edited version and the videotape-edited version have different emphases and need to be edited separately. How do you want to cut this video? Chris Paul rubbed his temples and finally felt better. After more than 200 minutes, even he felt a little dizzy. The content should be as concise as possible, and all unnecessary dialogue should be cut out, so that the film looks like a pure interview, rather than a specially shot film. Also pay attention to the camera shake, don't shake too much, and bring out some horror and mystery. Of course, this is not a real horror movie, nor can it be cut into a real horror movie. It just needs to create enough horror and mystery. The whole movie should not be too long, preferably not more than 100 minutes. Ryan is very helpless about the shake of the camera. Leaving aside the problem of the handheld camera, if you want to make the film more like a real story, then you need a certain amount of shake, which cannot be seen at a glance. Photographed on purpose. But if the camera shakes too much, it will make people feel dizzy, and they have to fall into a kind of contradiction. You mean to make it look like a horror movie, but not a horror movie? Chris Paul asked half understanding. He didn't understand what Ryan meant, and the video cut out in this way was a bit too weird. No, that's not what I meant. Ryan paused, seeming to organize his words, and said, I mean the first impression of the film is that it is a real documentary, not a movie, just like the protagonist in the film. It's as if I photographed it myself. In the face of an editor, it is difficult to keep true confidentiality, and only some information can be revealed. Anyway, when the movie is released, he will understand it immediately. As for the secrecy, Ryan is really not too worried. As a professional editor, he has his own rules in Hollywood, and he will never talk nonsense to the media without the consent of the crew. Unless he wants to bear high legal fees and leave Hollywood completely. In Hollywood, no matter whether it is a big crew or an independent film, such a person will not be liked, just like Ryan some time ago. You mean to make the audience think that this is a real event, not a filmed movie? Chris Paul couldn't believe it. Looking at Ryan, he never thought that the young and outrageous director in front of him would come up with such an idea again. He who has been in Hollywood for many years, how can he not understand the meaning of it? He just wants to make a fuss about publicity to lure the public into the theater. Many Hollywood film companies have done things like this, but the person in front of him obviously has no lower limit. When the film is released, he will lower the already low limit of the entire Hollywood film company and distribution company down by a large amount. It's a great plan, but this film was obviously shot, and it's a bit difficult to achieve the desired effect. I need a professional editing room, a qualified assistant, and at least a week. There was a hint of excitement in Chris Paul's eyes. Such a film would definitely cause a huge sensation when it was released. It is not a good opportunity for him, and he may even get rid of his current life and return to the mainstream Hollywood crew. A professional editing room, with an assistant. Ryan only hesitated for a moment before agreeing, saying, "No problem." Of course, he will not hire an assistant again, he can only serve as a part-time assistant. Also, as Chris Paul said, the public is not stupid, the media is not stupid, and film critics are not stupid. It is difficult to achieve the desired effect. So the next publicity is the key, so that people can feel first that it is a true story. This kind of publicity has only one chance, and it will be difficult to succeed next time. The best way is not to do similar publicity in the past few years. What's more, as the public is being fooled more and more times, it will only backfire. On the same day, Helen contacted a professional editing room, which was a professional editing room under Lucasfilm. It can be seen that the relationship between Helen's parents and George Lucas is far closer than Ryan imagined. A full week passed, Ryan and Chris Paul walked out of the editing room with tired faces. At the same time, the first thing he did when he came out was to contact Helen and ask her to notify the distribution company to hold a small preview session. In the early morning of the next day, Helen and Ryan went to Lucasfilm to meet George Lucas with the samples and publicity plans. After a few words of greeting, they went upstairs to a small screening room. During this period, Ryan hardly said a word, it was all Helen's entertainment. To put it bluntly, it was just a tryout meeting for favors, nothing more than for the sake of George Lucas. 20th Century Fox publishers had to come and walk. There are trial sessions like this in Hollywood almost every day. It's just that, with George Lucas here this time, even if the 20th Century Fox publishers had some thoughts in their hearts, they didn't dare to reveal them. The executives of 20th Century Fox have been in contact with George Lucas, hoping that he can restart the Star Wars series, and the investment and distribution channels will all be resolved by 20th Century Fox. Right now they naturally dare not offend George Lucas. After a while, 7 or 8 selection staff from 20th Century Fox gradually walked in. Although there were no senior figures from 20th Century Fox in the screening room, Ryan was not disappointed at all, but rather nervous. Even the selection staff of 20th Century Fox is not a small person to Ryan, and it is difficult to meet them on weekdays. Besides, this film does not have Lucasfilm's investment, and the scene in front of it is already for Helen's sake. It is conceivable that without Helen as an agent, Ryan could only run around copying distribution companies one by one, or look for professional buyers. Several 20th Century Fox film selection personnel did not intend to talk to the two at all, or they were not interested in the film that was about to be screened. An unknown newcomer, with a pitiful investment, on weekdays, reading www.yuyugonshu.com, they will never come. And the young rookie director seemed to have written a promotional plan, which made people laugh. If it weren't for George Lucas' face, they would come here in person unless they were crazy. However, 20th Century Fox's distribution arm wanted to distribute the film, even if it was a worthless piece of crap. From the perspective of the company's top management, maintaining friendship with George Lucas and the distribution rights of Star Wars in the future are only good for 20th Century Fox. As the distribution department of 20th Century Fox, they have always wanted to restart the filming plan of the Star Wars series, so as to increase the company's performance. However, the key to restarting the Star Wars series is not 20th Century Fox, but George Lucas and his Industrial Light and Magic. As the film gradually began to be screened, most of the film selection staff focused on how to get closer to George Lucas, so as to persuade him to restart the Star Wars series of films. A film shot with a handheld camera made them have no desire to watch it. They made up their minds to arrange a few theaters to screen it at that time. Tens of thousands of dollars. Almost no one cares about Rian's publicity plan. Including the 20th Century Fox executives who did not come, it seemed that they all had the same idea and took the opportunity to make friends with George Lucas. As for the video playing in front of you, it is dispensable. However, there are also one or two professional film selection personnel who stare at the screen intently, and occasionally look down at the promotion plan in their hands, their faces changing.